All right, we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about Chapter 7 in Rollins. And this chapter theme is tension release. Tension release, illness, injury, and pain are all major stressors for children, as well as medical procedures that can produce an even greater stress. Play can be a diversion for distracting from a stressful event, as well as being an outlet for expressing emotion. An activity can reduce tension by providing an acceptable outlet for aggression and anger. This chapter addresses coping with the stress of illness, aggression, hospitalized children and the physical release of tension, and special considerations. Coping with the stress of an illness. According to Ryan and Wanger from your textbook, they've suggested that there are several reasons for how children cope with illness. First, the positive relationship between the coping processes and the illness outcomes. So the better a child copes with a situation can lead to a more favorable outcome. Number two, empirical evidence shows that coping strategies are learned and therefore they're amenable to change. So if a child has a poor coping strategy, they flail, they're combative, they move around, they don't hold still, that can change with some coaching. If coping strategies are then learned, ineffective coping may be considered a risk factor and thus preventable. There are gender differences in coping. When children are coping with illness, boys more frequently than girls use cognitive restructuring and self-blame, according to theorists. Boys also attempt to control the situation. They may look for distractions, food or drink, to ameliorate the stress of an event. On the other hand, girls more frequently than boys use emotional regulation or social support. They become information seekers, and they may use the application of heat or cold as coping strategies. And then aggressive behavior has been shown to be 12 out of 15 times more frequently used than other coping strategies. So as a segue then into aggression, aggressive behavior is a symptom of stress. When people are stressed, children or adults, it can affect their body with a rigid movement or a surge of adrenaline. And you've seen children shove things, push things, throw things, as well as adults that, put their fist through a wall when they're angry or tense. Children's aggression is associated with many factors, according to the World Health Organization. And among them, you may find interesting, can be poor parental practices. In other words, parents that maybe don't talk to their children as much or explain or reason with their child, or may also role model inappropriate or risky behaviors when they are stressed. Low socioeconomic status, neurological, physiological, or perhaps other symptoms which are perhaps genetic of origin. maternal stress, tobacco use during pregnancy, medical complications at birth. And lastly, studies argue that aggression is learned behavior from the environment, from family, TV, movies, music, video games, or other media, according to American Academy of Pediatrics. Aggression continued. Aggression more commonly is seen in healthcare settings as affective or an emotional response. Young children especially have a difficult time communicating what they're feeling, and they may act out suddenly or aggressively when faced with frustration and situations that are beyond their control. Hospitalized children need opportunities to ventilate and gain an understanding of their feelings. Aggression can be related to a condition such as epilepsy or other conditions. And in addition to complex issues, aggression can be associated with endocrine diseases, such as diabetes or hyperthyroidism. When there is a fluctuation in insulin levels, it can change behavior and mood, as well as thyroid issues. Hospitalized children and the physical release of tension. Well, physical aspect of distress often surfaces as tension in the body when the body becomes rigid or stiff or still like a statue. Distress may present as aggression, tight shoulders, stomach cramps, cold or clammy hands or palms. Heart and breathing rates may increase. Muscles can become tense. Physically releasing pent-up tension is a method to restore that level of calm. Throwing beanbags at a target or hitting a pillow with a spoon. Children need safe ways to release tension. And young children's coping behaviors reflect concerns about autonomy and intrusion. In other words, a loss of independence, being able to do things for themselves, and the fear of bodily intrusion or bodily mutilation. School-age children identify stressful events and their reaction to them, whether they stayed calm or whether they acted out or whether they refused to comply with a treatment procedure or a medical routine. Hospitalized children and adolescents may utilize active methods to reduce tension. Throwing a ball against the wall or pushing and shoving things in their room. Special considerations. There are individual differences in coping strategies, which are reflected in the type of activity children choose. Some children may use aggressive tension-reducing activities, while others may not. For instance, when children are playing with Legos and they build something and then they knock it down, or they aggressively push a car on a car track to make it go really fast and skid off the track. Adults need to allow for aggressive tension-reducing activities and to create a safe environment for children to express themselves. Active physical means for reducing tension versus problem-solving approaches both help children work towards solutions. And your activity for this chapter is a foil sculpture. Depending on the type of foil that you use, whether it's thin foil or it's heavy-duty foil, that different texture of foil will create an opportunity for a child or for you to crumple up the foil or scrunch it into like a long tube where it can be shaped into like a cobra snake, or if it's a very thin foil, you can actually fold it and then create something like a rose or an origami shape out of the foil. So dependent on the type or thinness or texture of the foil, there is a tension release based on what type of foil you use and what you create or shape that flat piece of foil into. It becomes a catharsis activity where there's this tension release when you are handling something that you've changed the shape of. And you can create something and pose it and shape it and reshape it and scrunch it and reshape it again. Okay, that's what we have.